I don't believe that we should be spending an hour and a half meditating every day, followed by half an hour journaling. We've got stuff to do. We've got real life.
Tom Foxley, former Royal Marine, now a highly regarded high-performance mindset coach, sharing invaluable insights and strategies to cultivate a mindset geared towards achieving extraordinary results in life.
Who I believe I am, I would always act out. And if I'm limited by a story of like, this is who I can be and only to this level, that forms limitation. If you don't expose yourself to voluntary, intentional hardship, that incidental hardship will destroy you. Becoming the person that you want to be. That is training your soul to align with who you're supposed to be. That's all that happened. They just got 1% better over and over and over again. Why are you who you are and why aren't you anywhere else?
Welcome to the Rockman Podcast, the podcast that aims to inspire an unrelenting resilience in the face of adversity. Join us as we delve into the triumphs and trials of individuals who have conquered the world's toughest challenges in running, adventure, and life, sharing invaluable lessons in mental fortitude along the way. I'm Terry Rosamond, Rockman founder, and today we are exploring the key principles for achieving high performance in life, the typical framework used to enhance your performance mindset, effective strategies for overcoming obstacles and challenges, and practical tips for developing a high-performance mindset. If you want to stay up to date with new podcast releases and help us grow, be sure to hit the subscribe button below. And if you take any value from this podcast whatsoever, please give us the thumbs up, leave us a comment or a review below. And remember, this podcast is brought to you by Rockman, the ultimate online challenge platform. At Rockman, we offer monthly online running and fitness challenges inspired by the world's toughest fitness tests. So if you don't have the time, patience, or interest in the same old race day events, you can test your limits without restriction right now, from any place, anytime, all year round, by signing up to Rockman at rockman.co.uk. If you fancy giving Rockman a go, we actually have an insane offer on at the moment exclusively for our podcast listeners. You can save a massive 50% on your first challenge series by clicking the link in the show notes below. And finally, elevate your mornings with timeless wisdom from our daily Stoic email series. Start each day fortified with insights from the ancient philosophy of Stoicism. Again, you can sign up for free by clicking the link in the show notes below. Today, we are delving into high-performance self-development with a renowned high-performance mindset coach. From personal struggles to remarkable success, our guest's journey is a testament to resilience and determination. With a wealth of experience and wisdom, they're here to share invaluable insights and strategies for cultivating a high-performance mindset and achieving extraordinary results in life. Get ready to be inspired and equipped with the tools you need to thrive as we welcome Tom Foxley. First off, what is high performance?
Well, it depends, doesn't it? It depends on the individual. It depends what that looks like. It depends on what we're aiming at. For me personally, it means executing what I need to do at a high standard. That was very different from when I was in the Marines. That was a bit more of a kind of aggressive mentality. There's a little less flexibility there. It depends on what we're doing, where we're at. Even if you're a business owner, it's very different from startup to when you're running a larger business, and it's very different if you are running sprint races compared to triathlons, compared to ultras. It really varies within that. So the big thing here is one size fits one. Everyone thinks that mentality can be this. Well, there's a global human. And within the global human, you'll be able to address everyone with one system. But the truth is behind it, you've got to find what works for you. And yes, there's principles behind it. And it helps to have a coach who understands those principles. However, we need to specify what works for an individual. For example, I guarantee if you put David Goggins' mentality into me, I would crumble. It would not be good for me. However, if you put, I don't know, Rick Rubin's mentality, the producer and kind of mystic, I would say, mentality into Goggins, it wouldn't work for him. So it's an individual thing.
Yeah, it sounds like it's completely relative to the person that you're speaking to as well. So you mentioned a whole list of different areas that high performance could hit there. What sort of people are you working with day to day?
Yeah, so I work with self-made 30-year-olds who want to be the version of them that they were supposed to become. And what that really means is they're usually at a transitory period in their life or transitionary period in their life where they're looking to go all in, and they find themselves holding back. They're on cruise control. They're at 60%. They're kind of in that zone 2 and they want to be in like zone 4 for this phase of their life, but they've never been there. They've tried to get there, and they kind of hold themselves back from that. So I help them kind of push through those gears. And what we find along the way is there's glass ceilings that they bump up against, and I help them discover those, see what they are, and then remove them along the way.
Hmm. And what initially sparked your sort of interest in this area and becoming a high performance mindset coach?
Have you got 3 hours?
Yeah, we got plenty of time. We got plenty.
Okay. So I started this when I was when it was around the same time, but it was when I was diagnosed with something called sudden death syndrome. And that is the least positive diagnosis that a doctor could give someone who's 13 or 14 years old. It affects a really small number of kids, especially boys, and they just drop dead. It's a heart condition, and I experienced palpitations a bunch as a kid, and I was really athletic. I was a good football player. I was good at cricket, and it was my whole identity. I was also very anxious, and I got bullied a ton as a kid, and I had a really tough time. Those things combined led to, especially around like kind of that puberty age as well, where everything is just so unknown, led to me just being in the middle of football matches and just dropping with my heart rate going 240, 250, 260 beats per minute, which, as we know, probably isn't healthy at that age.
Mm.
So that would make me super faint. I would have to stop playing, and that took me down a whole host of a journey into being in Papworth Heart Specialist Hospital with cardiologists going, I just don't know what's wrong. And they said, well, just to be sure, we're going to diagnose you for now with sudden death syndrome, which means you could drop dead at any minute, and we don't know why. That turns out, long story short, like year or so of testing and being on a running machine with electrodes strapped all over me and watching a live scan of my heart beating and the oxygenated blood coming in and out, which is cool. Like that stuff was cool. The reason I was there wasn't, but seeing that was cool. And like did all that, and they're like, well, structurally it's fine. You'll probably be okay. And that was both relieving and very scary, because you'll probably be okay isn't exactly certainty. That led me down to the kind of, well, I just lost all of my identity at that point. I lost all my flair for life and enjoyment of life, and I just shrunk into a shell of myself, and I stopped expressing myself and being who I wanted to be, and even pushing hard in sports. I became a bit of a recluse, and I held back. What that led to 3-4 years later is an eventual realization based on a book called Bounce by Matthew Syed, which introduced the 10,000 hour rule and the concept that, you know what, you don't have to be this person for the rest of your life. And meeting a guy called Bear, and Bear was a Royal Marines commando. And in meeting Bear, coolest nickname ever. In meeting Bear, that kind of triggered this idea of who I could become. I think we've all got this ingrained pattern of who could I be. That led me to joining the Royal Marines. That led me to a journey of becoming a personal trainer at the same time. I was a reservist, so I did both simultaneously. I realized whilst personal training and coaching CrossFit that it was never the sets and reps. It was never the interval lengths that were the true limit. It was what went on between people's ears. And that was the true limit. That led me to coaching some elite level CrossFit athletes and a whole host who weren't elite. They just enjoyed it. And that led to business owners and CrossFit gym owners. And then that led me to where I am now. The thing that's always intrigued me is, why are you who you are? And why aren't you anywhere else? And anyone else, sorry. So that's been the captivating thing for almost all of my life.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to sort of high performance, I've heard a great quote was, it's about getting yourself, getting out of the way of yourself, essentially. How much is that true when you're doing it? How much is it? It's sort of self-imposed restrictions.
There's a few ways to look at this. It's true and it's untrue depending on who you're talking to. So I'm sorry for all the "it depends" answers that will come out for this, but it's a complex issue. And it's like the first "it depends" of this is, it depends who you are. It depends what your limitations are. So there's typically 3 areas of mentality and self-actualization that we need to focus on. The first 2 are limitations. The last one is growing into the person you want to become. So the first one, Our nervous system dictates how much we'll expose ourselves to challenge and how much we'll retreat from challenge. If everything is optimized and at least our body is, it's called neuroception, so we're picking up on signals of safety. So if we feel safe, internally we feel safe, what happens is our body engages with challenge, whether that is in business because we're more social, or whether it's physical because we feel safe enough that we can expose ourselves to risk. That means we can go towards a challenge. If our body is feeling threatened, and this could be because we have a baseline level of anxiety, we are not sleeping because we've got kids. It could be a long-held trauma pattern, for example. You go through two stages. The is that we play dead. And play dead is literally the same neurological system as when a cat brings in a mouse and the mouse lies there and plays dead and it just literally shuts down. It's the same system. Same things are happening. It's the same vagal nerve firing and the same pattern. So that could be a limitation. And getting out of your own way could mean, well, I've got to introduce some breathwork patterns that are customized to me because not all things will have the same approach to people. I've got to improve my sleep. I've got to cut down caffeine. I've got to hydrate better. I've got to get out in daily light. Whatever works for you and whatever is the trigger. Non-sleep deep rest or yoga nidra is a great one for people as well. That could be the first limitation.
Do you mind if I jump in quickly?
Sorry. Yeah, go for it.
But wait, when you say play dead, what does that look like in a human?
Yeah.
Like,
so
what is playing dead for us?
Great question, because I often skip past that. So a playing dead could be a little bit of a shutdown, and it could be I can't be bothered. I don't want to do this. I just want to sleep. I feel heavy. I feel slow. I feel fearful. I feel like if I risk anything, I'm going to get punished in some way or I'm going to be vulnerable. It's essentially a fear of vulnerability, and it manifests itself. So in the world that I currently work with, that looks like people retreating from challenge. So that looks like I've got my full list of work to do, but I can't make myself do it. I've got my intervals to do, but I can't make myself do it. That kind of thing. And the other one is if like the level in between, like level 1 as opposed to level 2, the hustle and grind is like, I'm just going to manically do stuff and it's going to be really imprecise. And there's kind of a time and a place for that. It gets you out of a situation, but it doesn't get you where you need to be. And it isn't optimal.
You see like busy fools, right? You see people just doing everything, but actually achieving nothing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly right. So that's the first one. The second limitation we can face is story-based. I call this rewiring our nervous system. What this looks like is we act out stories. We're captivated by stories. We're captivated by ideas. Jung said, we don't have ideas, ideas have us. And that's a really fascinating thing to think about. Like,
very deep.
We're captivated by ideas. Like, we are living out stories. Maybe we're living out the story of who our father always wanted us to be. Maybe we're living out the story of the hopeless romantic who can never get anywhere. Maybe we're living out the story of I'll never be good enough. I'll never be happy. I'm always supposed to be mediocre and the world never rewarded me for how I'm supposed to be. One of those stories, a billion others. But we live out stories, and those stories can form our limitation. We form these stories so that we can act within the world. If you didn't have a story about this is how a podcast goes, we wouldn't be able to do this. It'd be chaos. You wouldn't be able to think about what to say. You wouldn't know the framework. You wouldn't know the end state to reach. You wouldn't know how to ask questions, how to be present. It'd be...
You obviously haven't seen my podcast before then.
Well, you're covering up pretty well now.
Yeah.
So the stories can be the limitation too. Like who we believe we are. Because who I believe I am, I will always act out. And if I'm limited by a story of like, this is who I can be and only to this level, that forms a limitation. So the first stage when we work with people is identifying those two limitations and pulling them out of the way. So basically building up a baseline of nervous system regulation and make sure we're basically doing the right things and the basic things, world-class fundamentals, world-class basics. And then on the other side, it's a little bit of journaling work and conversational work and self-discovery about what story might you be living out. And there's a huge long process behind that, which is way too long to go into here because it'll be hours worth. But we identify that limit and start removing it. It doesn't happen all well, sometimes I was actually working with someone yesterday and it happened just like that. It was incredible to witness. He just got it shifted and was like, oh, the noise in my head, it is gone. The baseline anxiety, it is gone. And I've never seen someone get through it that quickly. Most people, it takes a little bit of a while. So we start doing things. And then the third thing is building character, training character. That's like becoming the person you want to be. That is doing the things, training your soul to align with who you're supposed to be, is self-actualization. For me, that looks like embodying a philosophy that works for you. Heavily based on Stoicism for most people because it's practical. Actually, you do shit with Stoicism as opposed to a lot of I don't know, there's a lot of philosophies that are just thinking about life and they're very pretty ways to view the world, but they don't actually help you get the things done that you're supposed to do. So Stoicism's a good framework. And then it's thinking, so there's 4 virtues in Stoicism: courage, wisdom, temperance, and justice. And we start thinking, well, how do I actually train those? How do I put reps into being more courageous? How do I put reps into becoming wiser? And coming from my strength and conditioning background, what I'm thinking of is sets and reps and adaptation. How do I put myself in a situation where I can get a novel stimulus and adapt to it and become a better version of myself? And then you do that enough, and that pathway becomes myelinated. The choice to do the courageous thing or the just thing, or to abstain from the things that are setting you back. So stop eating crap, basically, or taking the easy option. The choice to do that becomes simpler because it's ingrained through sets and reps, through voluntary exposure to it.
Yeah, do you know? I listened to a podcast the other day with Andrew Huberman. You've definitely heard of Andrew Huberman. And I committed this to memory, so I'm gonna try and say a part of the brain. I've tried to commit it. So he was talking about the anterior mid-cingulate cortex part of the brain. You smile because you know what I'm on about, right?
I've just heard him say that about 1,000 times. I'm not a neurologist, so yeah.
But it just reminded me of exactly what you're talking about. So it's the part of the brain that is responsible for our sort of get up and go at attacking a problem or a difficult situation. And that's exactly what he was saying. He was saying that the more you commit to difficult things and things you don't want to do, the bigger that part of the brain becomes. But also, the more you shy away, it actually reduces in size. So it's funny that you do have to get these sets, you do have to get these reps in, and it will increase your sort of ferocity, attacking these issues. So is that what? Did I make any sense? Did I get it right?
So, yeah. I think the funny thing is, I don't think there really is a right and the wrong answer here. We're not passing a test. We're finding what works for you, and a framework that works for you is fantastic. I like to phrase it as strengthening the go or no-go muscle. That seems to work with people. So you've got the go muscle, do difficult things, and the no-go muscle of stop doing the things that hold you back. And they're both things to intentionally work on. We've basically got 2 forms of hardship in our life. We've got intentional, things that you intend to go after, and incidental, things that just happen. Life is littered with incidental hardship. Things will go wrong. Things will be awful beyond belief. Things will be the worst times you've ever had in your life. But if you don't continually expose yourself to voluntary, intentional hardship in a progressive manner, that incidental hardship will destroy you because you're not callousing that part of the brain. You're not exposing yourself to it. There's a therapeutic technique, which is one of the only one that reliably is proven to work, called exposure therapy. And if you're terrified of something, if you've got a phobia, we expose you to small amounts of it on an ongoing basis. So that might look like if you're scared of spiders, we get a picture of a spider, put it in the corner of the room, and we progress over months and months or weeks and weeks to you holding a spider through small iterations. We find what scares someone, we find what terrifies them, whether that is putting their phone down before they go to bed for 5 minutes and then 10 minutes, all the way up to an hour and a half, or whether it is getting in cold water, or whether it is risking something on a sales call, or whether it is exposing yourself to financial risk because you've always felt like it was going to destroy you. Like, we do that in a progressive manner. So we're not throwing ourselves in the deep end, but it prepares us for the incidental hardship that just happens.
Yeah, it's got to be applicable to you, I suppose, and your sort of
Mm-hmm.
levels of tolerance or resilience.
Yeah.
I suppose it can be easy to think people sat in these lovely houses, these comfy chairs, and this comfortable lifestyle, this sort of modern civilized world, and think that we don't need to be putting ourselves through hardship because nothing ever happens. I'm fine. I'm fine the way I am. But then, as you said, when something outside of our control hits us, and it will hit us, it is coming, and it's going to hit us like a ton of bricks. If we don't have that resilience about ourselves, that is when we crumble. And I've got I say a funny story. It's about a friend of mine. And he went on a stag do, as we all do, and they had to go for their activity, they had to go down an aerial runway. You know, on an aerial, like a zip wire sort of
Okay.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Got you.
Gone, and it was made for children in a park. And he got to the top of it. You know, it's probably only about a meter above the ground, and it just went, 20 meters down into the park. And he had a panic attack. And I said, how come you had a panic attack on this? And he said, Terry, I haven't done anything hard in my life in the last 20 years. And I think that's it. If people aren't aware of sort of how stagnant they've become, it's going to rear its head in these moments.
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better. Like, you adapt to the environment you put yourself in. And the thing that makes humans unique is we can voluntarily choose that environment. We don't have to just sit in the environment that we're always supposed to become. And some people just prefer an easy life as well. I've realized this. Like, I personally believe that everyone should be doing what I'm like, kind of a form of not necessarily what I'm coaching, but some sort of self-development and becoming a better version of themselves. But it's just not right for everyone. Like, some people do want that easy life. And I think philosophically there's a problem with that. And I disagree with it. And I don't think it's the best way to use your life. But I mean, that's right for some people.
Do you know what? I almost I don't believe them if they say that I'm happy with them. I think
agree.
they're telling themselves that. I think if they saw any sort of incremental improvement in themselves in any area of life, they wouldn't shed a smile. They wouldn't be like, "Oh, that's cool. I enjoyed that." I think they tell themselves. It's like what you were saying when you play dead. I think that's what it is. They're playing dead. Oh, I don't want this. I don't want to better myself. I'm happy with the easy life. They're not. They're not
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah. So we've got a conscious reality and a subconscious reality, or an unconscious reality. And consciously we say, well, I'm happy being comfortable. I'm happy with where I am and I don't need anything else. But unconsciously we don't know what's happening. And I just think humans are supposed to grow. I don't feel like there's nothing that makes me feel better in life than when I am fully stretched, barely hanging on, but doing the thing. Maximal difficulty, maximal, not necessarily risk, but yeah, maximal difficulty for me. That feels better than sitting down on my phone on the sofa. That feels awful. I feel terrible off that. But when I'm in the mountains and I'm in a big couloir and I'm putting in some turns, and if I fall, I'm falling for a long time and probably against rock, that feels excellent. That feels like I'm alive. And I think that most people don't glimpse that feeling of being alive.
Yeah, and if they did, they'd be addicted.
Yeah.
That's it. If they did it, they'd be like, "Wow, that was awesome."
Mm-hmm.
We're creatures of aim. At the end of the day, it's hardwired into us to strive to achieve things, and whether that's actually achieving it or striving to achieve it, it's all hardwired into the sort of the dopamine systems within us. So that is exactly why I say when they say they're not, when they say they're happy with where they are, I don't believe them. There's a lot of misconceptions about, I think, high performance, i.e., you've got to wake up at 3 a.m. and go out for a 6 mile run straight away. Then you've got to do an ice bath for 2 hours and all this. What are some of the common misconceptions that you see, and how do you right them? What's your answer to them?
The big one is that high performers are 100% every day. I worked with 3 or 4 people who competed at the CrossFit Games and who were on the podium at the CrossFit Games, who did very, very well, and I helped them prepare mentally. I'll be honest, when I first started working with them, when we kind of organized that arrangement, I just thought I was going to be dropped into this world of absolute high performance where they're just on it every single day. And I don't know why I thought that, because when I was in the Marines, when I the small times that I glimpsed what special forces were doing, or got a few friends in special forces right now as well, they're human beings. They work very hard and they optimize as much as they possibly can, but they're still human beings. And the same thing for when I was in the Marines. Like, you're just doing the best you possibly can. You have some good days and you have some bad days. The same was true for these elite performers at the top of the sport. They had bad days. They had bad weeks. The thing is, though, they averaged out at an incremental improvement of 1%. That's all that happened. They just got 1% better over and over and over again. And because of that consistent striving for how can I become a little bit better, not how can I be perfect, but how can I seek progress over perfection, you get this compounding effect where the 1% are almost insignificant to begin with, but then they stack upon each other and stack upon each other, and you get this aggressive trend up at the end. And that's just because they've been doing things consistently for a long time. They probably average out at 80%, 90% execution. They're not 40% because they're not aiming at perfection. The irony is when you're at 40%, you think I have to get to 100%, but 41 is way better. Is way, way better. So that's the big one. The way we rectify that is just think about, what does better look like? Not what does best look like, but what does better look like? What does a small amount better than this look like? So if you are struggling with, I don't know, with your 10Ks, and it's like you getting your head about it and you're stressing out about this 10K time, what's just a little bit better look like? Well, maybe it looks like I'm going to warm up intentionally. Maybe it looks like I'm just going to have 1 or 2 phrases prepped for myself for when I get to that point in the 10K to tell myself. Maybe it looks like I'm going to make sure I've got the right clothes ready to go and I'm prepared. Maybe it looks like I just going to know my route beforehand so I can anticipate it. Maybe I'm just not going to think about the outcome. So like there's a few things, and just as a tiny bit better, an incremental amount better. That's what we're looking at. And we're just looking at, are we trending upwards? Are we a moving average? Like, what's the moving average? Is it up or down, or is it staying the same? Like, we want this gradual upward moving average.
I suppose what you see sometimes, people completely overhauling their routine or the way they come at things, failing miserably, and then going, "Oh, it's a load of rubbish. It doesn't work." And I think what you're saying is perfect. You just make it these small incremental changes, which will build over time. I've got a funny anecdote actually. Is that for January, I've stopped drinking. I don't know how long I'm going to go for, but people ask me, because I still pop out and stuff. I just drink alcohol-free beer, but people ask me sort of, "Oh, how has it improved you? You know, what have been the benefits from this?" And it's exactly what you've said. Is it's allowed me to stack up this compounding interest. It's allowed me to get those little 1% without being knocked back every weekend with a few beers or a bottle of wine and stuff like that. So I completely get it. What is your opinion on alcohol as a high performer? Does it have its place, or is it a big no-no?
No, I don't think it would still exist if it served no function in society and to humans. So I think there's a place for it. Like, it wouldn't have stuck around if there wasn't some benefit to it. Do I think it's optimal? No. Like, you know that when you've had 2 beers and then you look at your heart rate variability in the morning after and you see it's half of what it usually is, you're like, well, that's an indication. Like, that's an indication. You see it, the effect, but like, it depends what high performance looks like to you. It depends what what you want your life to look like. And I think most of us would like the space for the occasional beer or two, but not have it control us. And I think that's probably like the adult way to look at it. That doesn't mean that anyone's doing a bad thing. Like, you're not doing a negative thing at all by going for like no booze at all. I think it's admirable and it's a useful way to train yourself. I just think, yeah, it's not optimal, but there's bigger things to work on usually as well for lots of people, and there's not for some people.
Can you walk us through then a typical approach or framework or how you work with one of your clients? So, say I am a guy in his mid 30s to mid 40s. I've got a full time job. I like my fitness. Yeah, I like my running and challenges. Talk me through what you would do with that person in order to sort of improve their performance and get them to be a high performer.
Yeah. First things first, would put them through a testing phase. And this would be an analysis of those three areas that I spoke about before. Physiologically, what's happening? Where's your nervous system at? We'll look at things like heart rate variability, sleep patterns, like some breath testing. Look at what you're doing for nervous system regulation, a bunch of other things. We'd test that. We'd go through some story analysis work. So that's a little bit deeper. We'd see where people are at through conversations and through some journaling tasks. And then there'll be a questionnaire as well, which is basically a stoic questionnaire to see how well you're executing your days and what leveling up looks like. From that, just like, because, well, let's just back up a bit. There's a phrase in strength and conditioning that applies here. If you're not assessing, you're guessing. So I need to find what exactly works for that person. And then I'll simply look through and go, what is the minimum effective dose that I can give this person to adapt to? And what I mean by minimum effective dose is the smallest amount that will have the intended consequence that they want to have, the intended adaptation. So I don't believe that we should be spending an hour and a half meditating every day, followed by half an hour journaling, followed by like some daily planning. Like, we've got stuff to do. We've got real life. We've got family. We've got kids. We've got training to get on with. We've got work. We've got all these things we want to do. So it's try and devise a method that takes 15 to 20 minutes, 5 days out of 7, 4 days out of 7, something like that for most people, that works through those things. So it could be like, it depends. It depends what works best for them. And there's a little bit of a trial phase to begin with. See whether they respond well to, like, their confidence person. Do they like intellectualizing problems? Can we come in through that angle? Are they more of a feeler? Is it more of an emotional thing? Do they thrive under pressure and stress, or do they thrive under space and openness? And from that, we can kind of go, okay, well, this is the constructed plan for that person and how to adapt it.
And what sort of things are you getting them to do?
Yeah, so there's a whole host. That's like,
it depends.
Yeah. So that question is like, what tool are you using to build a house? So, well, I've got a digger to do the foundations, and I've got a concrete mixer to mix the mix, and then I've got like a saw to cut the foundation sides, and like they've got all these things that like we go into. So one big one that really works is non-sleep deep rest for the physiological side of things. Yoga nidra, human's favorite. There's a variety of ways to do it. That works very, very well, and that's the thing that I have massive success reliably with. Like 80% of people, that works very well. Some people it doesn't, and there's a bit more complexity there. And it depends on what people have. Sleep hygiene is a big one. Then if we're looking at story work, I talk through concepts called bound nature and free nature. Bound is in wrapped up and constricted, and free is in open and performing. So free nature is basically when we're acting in a serving way. Bound nature is when we're restricted. And I guide people by removing stories, removing state, and through awareness, to stop acting out that story that is limiting them. And that's a quite complex strategy, but it essentially comes down to 4 steps. Acceptance of accepting the problem is mentality and I need to work on it. Awareness, catching the thing, not pushing it away, but sitting with it and feeling what that's like to be in that moment. Accountability, this is what I'm going to do. It's not accountability to me, the coach. It's accountability to themselves and their future selves. And then adaptation. It just happens over time. So I kind of walk them through that steps. And that's a more kind of theoretical process. And then it could be things like, okay, if we're training temperance, So temperance is, are you doing enough of the right things and enough of the wrong things? Are you abstaining from things you shouldn't be doing? You're actually doing the things that make you better and you want to do. That might look like, well, I've got a goal of 10 minutes of breath work each day. I find myself not doing it. And then it's transferring the focus not onto getting the benefit from the breath work, but strengthening that go muscle. I'm just going to put as many reps in per day of strengthening that go muscle. And that becomes a great technique to use. And I'll give you an example. Someone that I was just finished working with, well, he's actually dropped down into kind of a more baseline kind of maintenance stage with me. But he would find himself at the weekends having multiple beers, kind of chinning off the weekend, grabbing a pizza on the way home, and it had a massive effect on the way he lived his life. Like he just felt terrible afterwards, and it would kind of bleed into Monday, and then he'd go like, "Oh, well, Monday's here again." We worked on strengthening that no-go muscle of I'm going to drive past the pizza place, and it's difficult because it was living in North America, and there's some great takeaway there. So he would drive past it, and okay, your goal there is just put the rep into saying no. Like that's the intensity. That's the challenge. When you're looking at it going, I could really do the pizza. It is going, okay, this is the work, this is the effort right now. I'm putting that in. And we strengthened that for long enough. Now he's doing polar races and crushing it, and he's inspired his whole family to start training. And he's like honestly, it's like a night and day difference with who that guy was and how he is now.
Mm. I like how you sort of focus, you boil everything down to sort of this singular eventuality, maybe like the trigger, and that is the focus, and it makes it actually quite achievable then, because
Mm-hmm.
it's just this sort of single thing. I do it a lot with my aims. I like to write down my aims and my targets for the year, but once I've written them down, I boil them down to literally such a small daily task, for example. So like the daily task could just be put my shoes on, my trainers. Because if I put my trainers on, I know I'm going to get out and do a run. So I'm not focusing on, I need to get a PB in my 5K. I'm not even focusing on, I need to do so many workouts. I'm not even focusing on, right, I need to do 45 minutes of training. It's just putting the trainers on. And I suppose that helps. What do you think of routines then? How powerful are routines in sort of maintaining this high performance? And give me, I'd love to know your morning routine if you have one.
Yeah. So mine is, I think routines can be helpful, but I think we want the right amount of structure. So structure often feels to us like we're putting up these kind of bars around us, and it looks like we're building a jail cell, and it like because we feel so restrictive. But actually, we want a minimal amount, so it acts like provided a little bit of cold exposure as well, and it provided heating up the internal temperature of the body, so it starts the wakefulness process. Is no caffeine for the first 90 minutes, and then it's just crack on into the day. I 4 days out of 7, if I'm nailing it, I get some breath work in. That looks like apnea training at the moment, breath hold training, because I'm training for altitude, and I think that might help. We'll see. And yeah, that's kind of the start to it. But then there's a planning phase in there. Like planning's usually done the night before, but it'll just be a tweak of what's the priority for today. Remind myself of the process that I'm going to go through, and then it's into the day and try and be precise and deliberate and intentional and effective.
I've got two questions off that.
Mm-hmm.
But the one I picked up was there was no coffee for the first 90 minutes. I was wondering
Mm-hmm.
if you can explain why you abstaining from coffee. Like first, because most people would be like, "Give me the coffee" as soon as they wake up. But secondly, what would a bad routine look like?
It's a good question. It's well, we could say a bad routine looks like the one that doesn't make you do the things that you're meant to do and makes the day harder. What does that look like for an individual? It's difficult to say. It'd probably be getting up and looking at your phone straight away, being very reactive. By the way, I haven't in that process. I haven't looked at my phone until just after I've started work and I'm doing check-ins with my clients. So, and hopefully later in the day. Hopefully it gets to around midday before I'm really looking at my phone and replying to messages, because I think that primes reactivity. The question around caffeine, the reason that we abstain by caffeine from caffeine at that point in the morning is because it spikes cortisol, and cortisol is there to promote wakefulness. If we artificially spike cortisol over and over and over again through caffeine, the body stops producing it as we wake up. So it basically screws our circadian rhythm, so we don't sleep as well in the evening. So we need that spike in the morning, so there's a drop off in the evening, and that's one of the body's many cues to go to sleep. So it stops you feel groggy in the morning, and it helps you sleep at night.
Can you share some practical tips then, or exercises that the listeners can implement into their own lives almost like straight away, so as soon as they finish with the podcast?
Yeah. How long have you got? Practical tips to start with. Those would be them. Natural light first thing in the morning. Some sort. I'm going to make it as specific as possible. I like a pun, and I've worked in the CrossFit community for long enough, so I love an AMWAP. Okay, not an AMRAP, an AMWAP. As many wins as possible. Yeah, as many
Right,
wins
okay.
as possible. So 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 1 minute at the end of the day, writing down any kind of wins. And a win is anything that moved you forwards, anything that helped you become who you wanted to be, or anything that felt good. The reason we do that is because it reinforces, or it breaks the story of this is who I am, and it shows you that you can grow. It shows you can move forwards, and it also focuses on the effort over the outcome, which is a massively important thing. Where else do we go with this, man? There's so much into it. Daily exercise, like it's, if you can press the physiological triggers first, so exercise, light exposure, some cold, some breath work, some intentional breath work, that'd be like a good start. Again, it depends where you are. It depends where you're in your journey. But the AMWAP is generally pretty universally applicable. The getting out to natural light first thing in the morning, abstaining from coffee, having a caffeine limit of around 240 milligrams per day. That's a pretty good limit. Then we get into the more kind of technical and complex aspects of it.
The AMWAP, that actually ties straight back into what we were saying earlier. As we are creatures of aim, and our dopamine system is set up for achievement, you get the same dopamine hit for small wins as you do for big wins. So if you're trying to get as many wins as possible, you're firing up that dopamine system straight away. It's going to put you in a fantastic mood to sort of attack the day as well. What about environment? How do we set up how important is a suitable environment for success, and how do we set up our environments for success?
Yeah, that's honestly not something I focus that much on. I find that people place themselves in wrong environments the whole time. We know we adapt to environments. We know we're the product of environments and people. However, initially we have very little choice of the environment that we're in terms of the big things, in terms of who we spend our time with, and the type of place we're in our work environment. So there's earlier hurdles that are bigger to focus on. I think it's something like it's something to consider, but it's probably a later down the road thing.
Mm-hmm. I've certainly done it myself recently. I've banned all crisps and chocolate in the house.
Okay.
Because if just again controlling that environment, if it's in the house, I eat it. Finally, then Tom, I was wondering, did you have a favorite quote or 20?
Yes, I have many, as we spoke about quickly beforehand. So my favorite quote is, "It's dark." Okay, I prepare you for this, and it's not the exact. Some people do find it kick up the arse. Actually, some people go like, "Actually, I get that," and those are usually my kind of people. But it's definitely not inspiring straight away. It's Thoreau, and it's kind of a bastardized version of the actual quote, but I prefer it. So the quote is, "Most men live lives of quiet desperation and die with the song still unsung within them." And that
Ooh.
is a terrifying prospect. That's the thing that keeps me up at night. Am I truly singing my song, the thing that I'm meant to do? Am I connecting to that purpose? And that thing, it morphs and grows as I grow. But that quote, that is how I measure success in my life. Did I cower away and did I play small, or did I lean into that challenge?
Exactly. I mean, people regret the things they don't do, not the things they do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Yeah.
it. Any more? Any more pearls of wisdom?
Man, I've got this Nietzsche quote that sits on my desktop. It will take me about 5 minutes to read, but it's the very basic concept of it is that we try to force away negative emotions, and we try and force away the discomfort. But he says it's like listening to music for the first time. And the first time you listen to a song, you hate it. It's uncomfortable. It feels weird. It feels like you don't really enjoy it. There's very few great works of music where I get that straight away. And the first time you listen to a song, it's uncomfortable, and it stands out, and you want to just walk away from it. But you give it time. His point is, you give it time, and you give it space, and you give it you outstretch like a kind hand to it. And it's the same for negative emotion, and it softens, and you see the beauty within it. And then eventually, I think the part in it is something along the lines of, and then you start to miss it when it's not there. And that's how we need to approach our inner world, the bits of it that we'd rather not see. It's not forcing it away. It's not wishing it wasn't there, but it's softening to it and getting to know it and listening and hearing it and understanding it, and then seeing that actually the beauty of existence is in that. So you're not getting any light quotes from me. I'm sorry. We're going deep with this.
No, I love it. It should be deep. It should be deep. What does the future hold then, Tom? I know you said you're in training. You've got some big challenges coming up.
Yeah, so in May I'm off to Pakistan. It's a big year actually for me. Last year we realized that we had a kind of ticking over and refining our feet stage in life after getting married. It's difficult, but I've invited it upon myself, and that's
But
a very
fulfilling,
different
yeah?
feeling from like, oh shit, it's just happening to me.
Yeah. Fulfilling, I bet, yeah?
Yeah, difficult, really difficult. I'm stretching myself more than I've ever stretched myself before. Like
Mm.
it's really difficult, and I think that's one of those misnomers about high performance, that is meant to feel easy. Yeah, I take back my past answer to this. It's like the idea that it's meant to feel easy. It feels awful. It feels so difficult, but it feels meaningful. And that's the difference between true visions of success and arbitrary goals. True visions of meaningful success, they pull you towards them, and there's no question about whether you put the effort in, and it still sucks and it still hurts. And last night I was working for ages into the night, and I'd been up for ages, and I was really kind of uncomfortable about it. And I broke all my rules around screen time because I just had to get things done for clients. But it's worth it, and that's the difference. Like, that's the difference between high performance and mediocrity. I think you've got something to get your teeth into. You've got a meaningful existence, and that has beauty within it.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about that purpose. It's all about that meaning. Again, going back to the dopamine system, it's the striving towards achievement which fires us up. And a great quote by Chris Williamson is, "Give a man a purpose and the means in which to achieve it, and he will crawl over broken glass with a smile."
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Where can people follow you?
Instagram's the best place. Tom Foxley, Foxley. That's usually the best place. Podcast is revamping. The website is revamping at the moment, which is tomfoxley.me. And then the podcast, The Freedom Project. That's an insight into what it means to really be free, not just free financially, but free from your own limitations. So that's one of my little passion projects, and those are the best places to follow me.
Is there any, if people wanted to seek out your services, is that where they should go? Or
yeah, Instagram is the best place to do that. Have a little chat with me. I love getting messages from people who listen to podcasts and hearing me on them. It really makes my day. Genuinely, it really makes my day to go, okay, well, I had a real effect on someone's life. So if you listen to this, reach out to me, say where you found it, or you found me, and I'd really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why we do it, right? It's for the sort of individuals out there. That's who we're talking to. That's who we're trying to help.
Yeah, exactly right, man.
Tom, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time. I loved it, and hopefully the listeners will get some tremendous amounts of value from it.
Hey, my absolute pleasure. Really enjoyed it.
Hello again, and thank you for listening to the Rockman Podcast episode. If you enjoyed that, you can click the link here to access all the episodes from the Rockman Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe.